All right, good morning, everybody. Thanks for joining me. We'll go ahead and get started here. So let me scroll in so I can read it. Always puts it in really small print, so I got to zoom in so I can read it. All right, so I start with questions that were asked up to an hour before. So you can ask your questions either below the video if you're on a smaller screen like a mobile device. If you're on a larger screen like a desktop computer, should be to the right of the video. So like I said, I start with questions that were asked up to an hour before. So if you happen to ask your question more than an hour ago, no worries, just copy and paste your question in there. The reason why I do that is I just want to try to answer questions for people who I think are here waiting to see their question get answered. If you asked your question late last night or something like that, I'm guessing that you're not here waiting to see your question get answered. So let's go ahead and get started here. We'll be starting here with Pascal P. So Pascal P says, working on the move training components, I feel like as I get the club more in line and inside path, I am opening the face too much or not keeping the club head close to that. I'm having to make too much at impact. Also still coming over the top enough to hit the approach shots left of target. So I would look on video because it doesn't, if you're hitting the ball to the left, then you're not doing the move, right? And the more you shallow the club, the more it opens the face. So that's why you do have to do, the move is really two parts. The move is getting the club on plane as soon as possible and getting the club face square as soon as possible. And the more you get the club under plane, the more you need to close the face in order to hit it on target. So if you're steep, like if you're like this, you're going to be swinging to the left, which means that the face needs to be more open. Because if I was swinging to the left and I had the face more closed, well, I'd just hit the ball left and left. It would start left and then it would just keep hooking to the left, right? So if I'm swinging over the top and steep, right, I have to have an open face to the path of my club in order to get the ball to go on the intended target, right? So if it's in line with it or close to it, it's going to go left or it's going to go left and even more left. So in order to get it to go on target, I need to get the face open to basically fade it toward the target. So when you're working on the move, you're working on getting the club to work more from the inside, which will make you have to close the face more, right? So you just need to keep on working through it. Basically get that club face closed down with your wrist angles, like we talked about in the move. The move is really two things, right? It's shallowing out the club. That's coming from basically the feeling of turning a doorknob with both wrists, right? So if you're right-handed, it's the feeling of turning a doorknob to the right. And then it's closing of the club face, which is coming from these wrist angles right here. So flexing that lead wrist, bending back that trail wrist. If I can do that right there, then I can rotate into impact. I can have good shaft lean, good compression, better impact components there. So it's hard to say exactly what you need to do without seeing your swing, but that's what I would work toward, is continuing to work on that and look at your swing on video. Just working on something. One thing that you can do is you can set up a swing station that can help you to swing more from the inside. So setting up something that would get in the way of your club to force you to swing from the inside. I really like using pool noodles. I think that those work really, really well. You can find it's summertime in the United States. If you're somewhere else, you may have a hard time finding them. You can order them online, but they're really cheap. It's just a little foam tube, basically. And I really like them because you can hit them with your club and it's not going to damage anything, right? But they're heavy enough to give you some feedback, and you can hear them, you can feel them when you hit them. So that's why I like using those a lot. So setting up a pool noodle to be in your way in the downswing and force you to swing from the inside, give you some feedback would be good. Other than that, you got to use video. Make sure that you're doing what you're trying to do on video and go as slow as you have to go to be able to do it. I think that's where a lot of people, I wish it worked this way, but unfortunately it doesn't. You can't just swing thought your way into things. A lot of people, they come up to me, they're just looking for a quick tip. Just give me a swing thought to fix it. but it just doesn't work that way usually. Usually you have to build a motor pattern, right? So if you're or you have to really exaggerate the opposite, right? So look at your swing on video so that way you know what is real, and then build the motor pattern through repetition to make it second nature. All right, so let's keep going here. So Eric R says, I'm trying to get more forward shaftly on impact. I'm sliding my hips, trying to push forward. If I stay back, I have too much weight on my back foot and hit fat. Any suggestions? There is going to be some lateral shift. The idea that your hips don't. So a slide would be where your hips move past your ankle. That's what I would consider a slide. So if you draw a line, a vertical line straight up from your ankle, and your hip goes past that, right? I would say that is a slide, right? So if I'm coming in and I'm like this, my hip is past my ankle, I would call that a slide. But from the top of the swing, if you look at tour players, their hips do move forward, but they just don't move past the ankle, right? They get to where it's directly in line with the ankle or slightly inside of it. So that's our compression line, right? Our compression line is the line that goes from our lead ankle, lead hip, and lead shoulder. We want that to be in a straight line. We don't want to have the hip bumped out like that. Or you can be a little bit bumped in, but that usually means that you're not extending through. But you want that to be in a nice straight line there at impact. And for an iron, you want it to be anywhere from vertical to just slightly angled away. Now, if you're hitting a wedge shot, right, you have a really narrow stance. It can be more forward, right? A lot of times a little pitch shot will look like this. My compression line is already, it's going to be really difficult not to. If you put your feet narrower than what your shoulders are, you really can't get angled away, right? So, but if you're taking a normal swing, right, you want that compression line to be vertical or slightly angled away. Now, that's where I think you may be getting into. It sounds like you may be getting into a little bit of trouble. You're feeling like you're sliding when the reality is you're just shifting your way forward, and that's what you should be doing. So as long as your hip's not bumping way out like this, and if it is, get your whole entire body moving, right? It's not just a hip slide. Get your your body, your head's going to move down and forward as well. So it's hard to say exactly what you need to do to get forward shaft lean, but moving your body forward is something you need to do as long as you're not sliding the hip way out of the compression line. So I look at what's going on there. If you're if you're hanging back on the back foot, odds are you're really kind of you're not getting the body to move forward enough. So feel like the whole body is moving forward as you're extending through. Real quick note, just wanted to let you know I do have some spots available right now for my unlimited swing reviews. Let me see. So currently I have 2 spots left. So if you're interested, click the Get a Review link. I just opened up some spots today, this morning. Most of them sold out already. But if you'd like to work with me, like me to take a look at your swing so we can see what's going on. Eric, if we're wanting to try and get you, if you're wanting to get more forward shaft lean, in order for me to see exactly what's going on to help you the most, I'd need to see your swing. Other than that, I'm just kind of guessing by what you're saying here. So yeah, Eric or anybody that's wanting to do unlimited swing reviews, I do have some spots available. I usually don't have spots available. So if you'd like to do unlimited swing reviews with me, click the Get a Review link. I'm at the top of the page, and you can check it out. Go down to sign up for it. If you don't happen to get a spot in time, no worries. Just join the waiting list, so that way next time. I emailed the waiting list yesterday. Sold us a few spots to them, and then sent it out to the rest of the list today. All right, so Kevin S. says, does a weak to strong grip affect ball position at setup? Freddie C, strong grip, ball position looks back. a ball or two from players with a weaker grip? Not necessarily. I wouldn't say that if you have a stronger grip, you have the ball more back in your stance, or with a weaker grip, you have it more forward. It's really the grip and the ball position are really dependent on the player themselves. There's no ball position that you have to have, but I can give you generalizations. So, I like to see players with a stronger grip. Typically, the reason for that is because most players struggle with getting the club face closed, and having a stronger grip helps to get the club face more closed. If you're someone who's struggling with slices, or just getting the club face, leaving the club face open, and you have a weak grip, use a stronger grip. It's the easiest thing to help you get the club face more closed, because it's literally just holding the club differently. That's all it is. And when I'm talking about, for those of you who aren't familiar, a weaker grip would be where your thumb would be basically right on top of the grip, right? So thumb is right on top of the grip. Your hands are kind of on the grip like that. So you can see there's creases that are created between your thumb and your hand, and those creases are pointed more up toward the chin when you have a weak grip. So you can see there, the crease is pointed up there. When you have a stronger grip, so a strong grip will be, I'd have my thumbs more on the side of the grip. So if you imagine the top of the grip being 12 o'clock, this side of the grip being 3 o'clock, a stronger grip will be where your thumbs are more toward 3 o'clock. And now you can see those creases are pointed more toward my right shoulder. And then neutral grip would be, somewhere in between, somewhere like in the middle, like my clavicle here, right in that area. And that would be where I have my thumbs more on 130. That's what I typically use. A neutral to strong grip. I think most people are going to benefit from that. Now, that's not to say that you can't play better golf with a weak grip. Everybody's a little bit different. But ball position is also another one. I usually tend to like to see players have the ball position more back in the stance. I take it back. Not back in the stance, but more middle to slightly forward of the middle of the stance. The reason for that is that a lot of people struggle to get the club to work from the inside. When you have the ball more toward the middle of your stance, or the further back the ball is in your stance, the easier it is to get the club to work from the inside. People struggle with making ball first contact. Usually, the further back the ball is in your stance, the easier it is to make ball first contact. So if you're thinking in that sense, why not just play it off your back foot? Well, if you play it off your back foot, you're going to tend to really chop down into the golf ball and not hit the golf ball really well. So I like to see, basically, if I have my good spine angle here, and I hang the club from my earlobe, right, and I drop that straight down, that's about where I want my ball placement to be. That's just slightly forward of the middle of the stance. So that's what I generally like to see. But if you're someone who has a very late release, right, someone who, like a Dustin Johnson, who releases the club way out in front, you may want to have a ball position that's more forward, because when you release the club later and he gets the club face so close very easily, you can have a more forward stance, and you probably need to have a more forward stance. Otherwise, you'll have too much shaft lean, right? But most people just aren't going to be in that kind of position. So generally, I would say ball position and grip strength aren't really something that there's not really a big correlation there. It's more, you can have people with strong grips that have the ball more forward, like a Dustin Johnson, and you can have weaker grips that have the ball further back, right? So it really just depends on the player and their swing and things like that. You're going to tend to see tour players with ball positions, especially those that have a lot of forward shaft lean, like a Dustin Johnson. They may have the ball position more forward. That's really what it's more correlated to how much they release the club more out in front. The more you release the club out in front, the more shaft lean you have at impact. Generally, the more forward you're going to play the ball. Also, the shot style that you like to take. So Dustin Johnson likes to hit a lot of fades. So it's easier, just like it's easier to swing from the inside when the ball is more back in your stance. It's easier to swing more out to in when the ball is more forward in your stance. So it really tends to what Dustin Johnson likes to do. So a lot of the ball position, a lot of it just depends on what you're trying to do with the shot and what your natural tendencies are. everybody's going to be a little bit different in that regard. So it's just something you got to have to kind of play around with. But in general, like I said, I like to see just forward of the middle of stance for shots that are played off the turf. That usually works pretty well for most people. All right, so David K says, when I do the tennis racket drill, my ball hooks, but it starts out left. Can you recommend a drill, alter my swing path more into out? So that is because that's more than likely because you're just closing the face too much, right? So it's hard to say without seeing your swing exactly what's going on. But if your ball is starting left, that means that your face is too closed, right? So what's likely going on, David, is that you're still releasing the club very early. You're just turning the handle down. You're doing the wrist moves, but releasing the club very early. So when you come into contact and you have an early release, right? So let's say you come into contact, you have an early release, you flip the club. Well, when you square up the face, your lead wrist is going to have some cup in it, and your trail wrist is going to be pretty flat, right? Well, if I just do the move and still flip, and I change these wrist angles, which we talk about in the move, we talk about bowing that lead wrist and bending back that trail wrist. Well, if I do that and I'm still flipping through contact, well, look at how closed my face is. That club face is pointing toward my shin. So that's more than likely what's going on, is that you're either early releasing the club, right? And that's causing you to close the face too much with the wrist angles, or maybe you are getting shaft lean, but you're overdoing the closing of the club face. So I would look at your swing on video and see, okay, do I have shaft lean? Yes or no. If you do, then you're just overdoing this bowing move, and I would just ease off it a little bit, right? Or you can weaken the grip a little bit if you really like it, if it feels comfortable for you to bow the wrist that much, right? If you are not getting shaft lean, then you need to work on releasing that club more out in front, feeling like the hands are more in front. Because if you look here, if I have the square club face and no forward shaft lean, so early release, and then I turn the handle down, right? Now the face is closed, but then I push the handle forward. Now the face is square and I have shaft lean. So you need to get the hands more in front, and that's what we do in the straight line release course. Michael B says, working my way through the move course, but having trouble releasing too early, opening up too early in my downswing, or spinning out. This results in a lot of top shots, or just not hitting my irons solid, usually hitting off the heel of the club. Others are just starting off target and going further left with the draw. Any thoughts? So my guess is that your arm structure is not very good. I'm not a believer in spinning out, that it's a hip issue. It's really not usually a hip issue. It's usually an arm structure issue, that your arms just aren't in sync with your body. If you look at a lot of players like Dustin Johnson, who opens their hips a crazy amount. They get their hips opening very, very quickly. Well, their arms and things are in sync with their lower body. So it's not that you're spinning out your hips. It's more that your arms just aren't moving with your hips the way that they should be. So more than likely, you're probably way across the line, have your elbow flaring way out, and then you start the downswing and you're kind of like this, and then you got to drop it way underneath like that or something like that. It's hard to say without seeing your swing, but I'd focus on getting that arm structure to be a little bit better at the top. A great drill that I recommend is what I call a ball drill, a ball between the elbows drill, whatever you want to call it. But basically, I don't have the ball in here. But what you could do is take like a toy ball, like a 6-inch diameter ball, and put it between your elbows, and then take some swings doing that. And that will get your arms and the club in a much better position at the top. Because more than likely, you probably look like this at the top or something like that, right? The elbow, and then you start down, and you're thinking that, oh, my hips are spinning out. But the reality is that your arms just aren't in the right place to go with how well your hips are moving. So it sounds like you probably move the hips well, just that your arms aren't in sync or in the club, in the arm structure is not very good with that. So work on that ball drill, put the ball between the elbows and take some swings doing that, and it will help out, should help out quite a bit with that. Without seeing your swing, it's hard to say, but like I said, I do have some spots available right now. Let me check. So right now I have one spot left. So if you're interested, you want me to take a look at your swing and know for sure, I can do that. But I got one spot left right now, so go grab it if you want to work with me. So Roger B says, I have a hard time turning the handle on the move. I get better results with a strong grip at setup. Any downside to this versus the move? No, yeah, I mean, you still need to do the move. It's just if you have a stronger grip, you don't have to do it as much, basically. But you still need to come into contact with the bent back trail wrist. That doesn't change. If you want to have shaft lean at contact, you still have to have the trail wrist like this. Whether you have a weak grip and it's like that, or you have a strong grip and it's like that, right? That trail wrist still needs to be in that bent back position, right? Now with the lead wrist, it's either going to be flat or bowed if you have a weak grip. If you have a weaker grip, you have to be more bowed, and you can be more flat if you have a stronger grip. But you still have to do the move. It's just that if you have a stronger grip, you don't have to do it as much. It's a little bit easier, I think, if you have a stronger grip, which is why I tend to tell people to go with a more stronger grip. It may not look aesthetically as good, or it may not feel quite right at address. But remember, the address position is not the impact position. This is not the impact position, right? This is the address position, and then the impact position is more like that. So what I would like you to do is get into a position that you want to be at impact and use a grip that feels comfortable in that position, because that's the most important thing. And most people will feel a stronger grip is more comfortable. And then go back to your address position there. So you can see my grip is more on the neutral to strong side, because to me, this feels way more comfortable. But if I were to use a weak grip and then get into that impact position, it just feels like I just don't know that I can really get my wrists to move like that. It doesn't feel very natural for me. But for some players, it is. Like if you look at Matt Wolff, he has a weak grip, but he comes into contact, he looks like that. Ben Hogan had a weak grip. He came into contact with a very bowed lead wrist. But not everyone is going to move comfortably like that. Everybody's a little bit different. So you just have to find what works best for you. So there's no downside to it. And what does it matter? You kind of have to think about it this way. It may be a downside to somebody else, but to you, if it works great, then what does it matter? Everyone's got their own unique, not everyone's going to have the same golf swing. And that's kind of the beauty of the top speed golf system. The top speed golf system is, the things that all players do. So if you look at Jim Furyk, you look at Tiger Woods, you look at Dustin Johnson, Adam Scott, Brooks Koepka, very different golf swings. Well, Adam Scott and Tiger Woods have very similar golf swings, but the rest of them, very, very different golf swings. But what do they all have in common? They all have in common the top speed golf system. And these are the things that all the better players do. So if you do these things really well, the top speed golf system, then everything else is kind of your unique kind of swing signature to get you to hit the ball the best. And really what it comes down to is, trial and error, finding what works best for you, what gives you the best impact position. So remember that whenever you're trying to work on certain things. So Pascal P says, thank you, no problem. All right, so Jerry B says, I can't seem to get the feel for increasing my tilt away from the impact point to enable full extension through impact and full release after impact. Looking for a feel that will help in my practice sessions. I just hit fat when I try to keep left arm from tiny chicken wing. So it's not. I think when a lot of people think about axis tilt, they're doing this, and then they come into contact and they're doing this. The tilt away from the target comes from the body opening up. So it comes from a lateral shift of the hips, while the head doesn't move forward a ton, and while the body opens up. So here I am at address. If you look at the overall angle of my body, I'm going to be about 8 degrees angled away. This is what we talk about in the stable fluid spine course. I'm going to be about 8 degrees angled away. As I go up to the top of the swing, right, I'm not going to slide my body. I'm staying very centered. I'm shifting pressure into my trail foot and turning and twisting and turning and tilting my body. And if you look at the top of the swing, I'm going to have the same angle at the top of the swing, the same angle on my body. I'm going to still be 8 degrees angled away. Now, as I move into impact, my head is going to move forward a little bit while my hips move forward a little bit more, and my body is going to open up, right? So now, if you look at the overall angle of my body, now I'm in that 20 degrees angled away position. So here's my impact, right? Now I'm in that 20 degrees angled away position. So if you are hitting fat shots, it's probably because you're releasing the club early, you're not opening the body, you're not shifting your weight forward, you're hanging back, and you're kind of doing like a reverse C is probably what you're doing. You're probably looking like this to try to get in that angle. And that's not what we're trying to do. You need the whole body from the top of the swing needs to move forward. And then as you start to open up, your hips will be more angled away. Your hips will be more forward than your upper body because the body's opening up. So you see my nose is still back behind the ball a little bit, but my body's moved forward. So here I am at address. Here I am as I go up to the top, and then I'm going to come into impact, right? My body's moved forward and my hips have opened up, and that's going to give me that angled away feeling. So I don't know that it's a feel that you need to have. It's more of understanding what's actually happening. Your swing is not doing this where it's this and then that. That's not what we're doing. It's this and then a shift forward and body opening up as my head stays down down through the ball and my hips move forward and open up a little bit. That's what's actually happening. That's what we talk about in the level 3 of the stable fluid spine course. So Di P, and I apologize if I'm mispronouncing your name, says, morning Q, my question is, can I set up the right elbow pit facing forward at the address in order to prevent a big slice? That can definitely help because if your right elbow, so what's happening when your right elbow pit is facing more forward? Well, that means that your hand is more under, right? And when your hand is more under, it's a lot easier to get the club face closed. When your hand is over, let's say your hand is over like this, right? My elbow pit's pointing more toward the target, right? Well, my hand's going to be in a weaker position. It's way more difficult to get that club face closed. So if my hand's more under because my elbow pit is up, it's much more easy to do that. The other thing that happens is that if my elbow pit is pointed more toward the target, this usually means that my shoulders are going to be more open, right? And again, that's going to be more of an over-the-top kind of move, which causes a slice. If my elbow pit's more under, that's going to help me get my shoulders squared up, which is going to make it easier to swing from the inside. So it's not that elbow pit up, no slice, guaranteed. It's more that it's setting you up in a better position to be able to swing from the inside with a closed face. It doesn't mean that is what's going to happen. It just means it's going to set it up easier for you to do that. I could easily set up with my elbow pit up and with a strong grip and then bring it back and then swing over the top with an open face. I could easily do that, but it just makes it easier to swing from the inside with a closed face to get the ball to draw instead of slice if our elbow pit's more under, at address. That's going to get the shoulders more tilted. That's going to get the grip stronger, which sets you up to make things a little bit easier. All right, so let's keep going here. William H. says, I putt right-handed. Is there a good drill to help prevent my left wrist from breaking on the fall through? Yeah, so what the drill that I like to do, and the right wrist is breaking or the left wrist is breaking. A lot of the reason is because the right wrist is breaking, because the right wrist is doing this, right? So that's probably making the left wrist break. So the way I like to think about the putting stroke is that imagine you're clapping, okay? Now put your hands together and keep them together. All right, now I'm going to go down to in my putting posture here. And what I want you to do is I just want you to rock the shoulders back and forth. And what you're using to rock the shoulders are your lats. So your lats are the muscle that's below, kind of underneath your shoulder blade there. So that's what you're using to swing that back and forth. So there's none of this going on, right? It's all your hands are together. This is all one structure, one piece, and that swings the putter back and forth. So if I grab a putter here, I kind of have that same feeling, and I can just swing it back and forth. I can take, now this putting grip, the Flat Cat, is easy to do this drill with, but you can do it with any putter. But just kind of put your hands in between it like that, and you can just putt and just swing it back and forth. And that can give you the sense of how the putter should swing there. And now you can take your normal putting grip and you can just swing it the same way, right? So I don't need to do any of this, right? Just keep those wrists nice and solid and focus on using your lats to rock your shoulders back and forth, back and forth. That's all the putting stroke is. Doesn't have to be any more complicated than that, for sure. That's where you get into getting the yips and stuff like that, when you kind of overcomplicate the putting stroke. It really doesn't have to be any more complicated than that. And that's whether you putt right-handed or left-handed, doesn't matter. So John S. says, good advice on checking for shaft lean on video. I've been hitting some left marvelous and need to figure out if I can weaken my grip a bit. Yeah, it's more than likely not a grip issue. It's more that you're just not get. More than likely, it's the shaft lean, just not getting shaft lean. You gotta get the club to release out in front. So Alberto A says, on the downswing, does keeping your knees bent prevent one from throwing the right hip towards the ball? How do you keep the right hip from going towards the ball? So we do not want to keep the hips or the knees bent. So what you're doing in the start of the downswing, right, from the top of the swing to lead arm parallel, that's when we're going to start to bend our knees. But we don't want to keep the knees bent, because if we keep the knees bent, then we can't move, right? So what we have to do is, from this maximum bent position, we have to push into the ground with that lead leg to straighten out the lead leg. And that helps you to open up the body. I can't really open up my hips if my lead leg stays bent. I'm going to keep my hips, square if I do that. I need to push into the ground and push the hips out of the way to be able to clear them out of the way and swing through. So, so the way that you keep the hips from moving forward is by bending, right? So bending and then staying bent as you're going through, right? So not extending the hips. That's how you keep it from. So when we go up to the top of the swing, we've extended our hips a little bit. So we have forward bend at address. And then when we go up to the top of the swing, we're actually going to extend the hips a little bit. Now, we don't want to do it too much, because we'll end up in a reverse pivot. But we want to do it enough to be able to keep our head steady, basically, right? To be able to keep a nice, steady, fluid spine. So we extend just a little bit as we go up to the top. So forward bend, then we extend a little bit as we go up to the top. Now we want to go back into forward bend, right? Back into forward bend, and then we want to stay there. If you're someone who's really moving your hips toward the ball very, very quickly, or too soon, you may need to feel like you're staying in forward bend almost entirely through the swing. Even though that's not necessarily what's going to happen, that may be what you need to feel like is going on to get what you want. Because otherwise, you may start standing up. So a good feeling that I like to give players is to think that the hips never ever move toward the ball in the swing. They only move away from the ball and toward the target. So what I would feel is, when I'm going up to the top of the swing, that my hips move away from the ball, and then the start of the downswing, my hips move away from the ball, and then through impact, my hips move toward the target. So they never ever move toward the ball. Another good thing to think about is, imagine your hips are a door, and in the backswing, the hinges for a right-handed golfer, the hinges are going to be on your left hip. So what that means is that my hip is turning back that way, right? So it's turning back that way. My hips never move closer because I'm hinged right there. And then in the downswing, my hips are a door again, but my hinges are on the right hip. So then I move back out of the way that way. Now, this is an extreme feeling, but it's what people need to feel usually to keep the hips from moving toward the ball. So away, away, toward the target. Another good thing you can do to give you some feedback so you don't have to look on video all the time is to use like a chair or a wall or something like that. Set it up to where it's about a hand width away from your backside. Go up to the top, touch the chair, keep contact with the chair all the way through until after impact, and then you can come all the way around in the full finish. If you're feeling that away from the ball, and then toward the target feeling, you should be able to keep your hips on the chair. So Ed D says, do you have to get the upgraded V1 Golf app to measure angles? I don't believe so. I think you can do it. Let me check here. Because I don't have I don't have the paid version for the normal app here. But let's see. I'll just take a quick video. Oh, it's got the timer on. All right, there we go. All right. So let's see. So I'm going to draw some lines here. No, you don't have to. So the way that you create angles on V1 Golf is you just draw lines and you connect them together. So you probably won't be able to see this on my screen. Let's try this again. All right. So take a quick video here. Just got a video. There we go. All right. So there's I'm using Android. It's going to be different. I can't remember. No, it's the same on the Apple app. But you see, I got a video in my office here. So I'm going to take the line here. See if I can change the color of it to make it easier to see. So I'm going to use my line tool. What I'm going to do is I'm going to draw a line, and then I'm going to keep my finger where I want the vertex of the angle, and then I'm going to put my other finger down, and I created a line there. So you probably can't see that. It's probably too bright. But that's how you create an angle on there. There isn't an actual angle tool. You just connect two lines. So play around with that. If you go to V1 Golf's website, they have tutorials and stuff. I believe even within the app they have tutorials and stuff in there as well to show you how to use it. So pretty easy to use. That's what we use for the unlimited swing reviews. If people are interested in unlimited swing reviews, that's what we're using for that. All right, so P says, thank you very much, Q. It helps me a lot. I'll practice at the range. Yeah, if you're struggling with slicing, I'd highly recommend setting up. I talked earlier about the pool noodle. I would highly recommend setting up something like that to give you instant feedback on swinging from the inside, because you want to make sure that you're always using feedback when you're practicing, because otherwise you have no idea if you're doing what you're trying to do correctly. So if you're working on club path, if you're working on slicing, it's very easy to set up a swing station to give you some feedback, because otherwise you have to use video, and video can be tedious, right? You got to set up the video, you got to push play, then you got to go set up, make the swing, and then come back, analyze it, and then you kind of got to keep going through the process. It can be a very tedious process. Now, it's a necessary process if there's no way to really set up an instant feedback mechanism. But if there is a way to set up a feedback mechanism that's instant and right away, I highly recommend you do that. So something like you setting up a pool noodle that forces you to swing from the inside. So that way, if you hit the pool noodle, you swung over the top. If you go, you can usually tell if you go above that pool noodle. It's usually pretty obvious, and the result will be pretty obvious. If you hit a slice, odds are you swung over that pool noodle. Or if you hit a big pull, odds are you swung over that pool noodle. So set up the pool noodle, force yourself, set it up. You want to make sure you set it up down your toe line. Don't set it up out here. You can still swing over the top if you set it up there. So set it up to where it forces you to swing that club inside the hands. When I say inside the hands, I mean on this side of the hand. So here are my hands. If you drew a vertical line on my hands, the club head needs to be on that side of my hands to get the club swinging from the inside. So I recommend setting something up like that, because that way it's just instant. If you mess up, you can roll another ball over, do a couple rehearsals, get back into it. But if you have to look at video every time, a lot of times you won't stick with it because it's such a tedious process. So make sure you're using a feedback mechanism like that to get better results. So Charlie G says, I'm having trouble achieving a forward shaft lean. Please demonstrate the hand action on downswing from hands in front of the right thigh to left thigh. At which point I think contact should be made. At what point does right wrist straighten? So the right wrist is going to slowly start to straighten from the top of the swing down here, right? But most people straighten it too soon. So it's not like it's being held and then all of a sudden it goes. It's here and then it's slowly starting to open up. So it's just like if I were to throw a ball, right? If I'm throwing a ball, I'm not keeping this cocked and then it goes, right? I have it cocked back and then it's slowly starting to go, right? It's the same thing in the golf swing. So, and you can't really think about that in the golf swing. Things are happening too fast. You can't be thinking, oh, I'm here, then I let it go. That just doesn't work that way. So you just have to train yourself to get your hands in front of the ball and how to square the face when you do that. The reason why people struggle with forward shaft lean is because it's happening at the fastest point in the golf swing. So it's something that you have to train very slowly, and most people don't like to train that way. Most people want to just have a swing thought and just make it happen. It just doesn't work that way. When things are happening really fast, you have to break things down and go really slow and deliberate, then build up the speed from there. So it's just like if you were learning to type, right? You just don't start typing 100 words a minute right away, right? You have to build the motor pattern to be able to do that, right? Now, you could put your fingers on the keys pretty much right away, right? Because that's a setup thing, just like you can change a setup thing in your swing very easily. But when it involves movement and fast movement, where your brain can't process things fast enough to change them, then you have to build a motor pattern to be able to do that. And that's what the straight line release course. So that's why people struggle with shaft lean, because it's happening it's the most difficult thing to change in the swing, because it's happening at the fastest point in the swing, and there are so many variables involved with it. But just to talk about the wrist angles, when somebody is early releasing the club, so not getting any shaft lean, right, and they're squaring up the face, their wrist angles look like this. The lead wrist is cupped usually, and that trail wrist is flat, right? So I equate this to somebody spiking a ball into the ground and somebody throwing a Frisbee straight into the ground. What you want to do is throw a ball or skip a rock across the water, right? Or throw a Frisbee in front. That's what we want to do with the lead hand. So with no forward shaft lean and a square club face, that's what that looks like. Well, now if I keep these same wrist angles, so cupped lead wrist and straight or even pushing through trail wrist, and now I push my hands in front, well, look at the club face. It's wide open. That's wide open club face. So that's why people struggle, because they're very aware of the face and that it's not square. So what are they going to do to square it up? They're going to flip it to square it up. All right. So that's why we have to change the wrist angles as we're coming through contact. So if you're really, really trying to exaggerate this, what I would try to feel like is that you're coming into contact like you're throwing a Frisbee, and you're keeping the emblem of your glove or your lead hand angled down the whole way. So it's almost like I'm rotating my arm to throw a Frisbee, and I'm keeping the emblem of my glove angled down to throw a Frisbee. So if I were to throw the top of this box, I would throw it like that, right? Just like that. But what people do is they do that, right? They come in and they're throwing it straight into the ground. You want to throw it out toward the target, and that's coming from that motion. And then with the trail hand, it's more like I'm waxing a car, right? So the emblem or the palm of my hand's pointing down, and I'm rotating my arm over. So that's like skipping a rock across the water. I'm going like that. So if I put those together, that looks like this, right? Square club face, hands in front, right? If I were to have those same feelings and flip the club, right, I feel like I'm going like that, but I don't have shaft lean. Look at how close that face is. So I gotta get those hands in front to square it up. So this is what we talked about. You need to do the move, and you need to do the straight line release course, and you need to take it deliberate and not try to. I would do a lot of reps at home, because the reality is that if you can't do it slow, then you can't do it fast. If you can't do it without a golf ball, then you can't do it with a golf ball, right? If you can't do it in a pausing swing, then you can't do it in a fluid swing, right? So you got to work your way up there. Start with a slow pausing swing, then move into a slow fluid swing. When I say slow, do like a 10-second swing. Your swing should literally look like this initially, and not hitting a ball. You should go like this. Right? So that was like a 10-second swing. It may not have been that long, but you get the idea of how slow you want to be with it. Then I would slowly pick up the speed, and I would try to exaggerate things. Pick up the speed, just like if you were learning how to type, right? You start out slow, right? You're figuring things out. Your brain is learning where all the fingers are. Your brain is learning the positions that your body needs to be in to make it happen. And then you go a little bit faster, and you still get in the positions. They go a little bit faster. So go as slow as you have to go to be able to do it, and then build up the speed from there. You can't just swing thought your way into it. It's not going to work. It never does. And I think that's why, because I think people think that because everything else that they've done pretty much in their swing, they've been able to do that, right? But when you're changing something that's happening at impact that involves so many variables, because it changes your ground contact, right? If I release the club later, I might hit the ground later, right? All things equal, I'm going to hit the ground later. So if I'm here and I release the club, I hit the ground there. If I'm here and I release it way out in front, I hit the ground way up there. So my ground contact is going to change a ton. My club face can control, or my club face can change a ton, right? If I release it, it closes it. If I have it open, or if I release it later, it opens it. So I have to change wrist angles to get those things working better. I have to get my legs have to work differently. Just everything has to work differently to change that. So that's why you have to work slowly to work slowly, and then build up the speed from there. So that way your body can learn all those different movements to get there, right? So that's my best advice to you, is to not try to swing thought it, but you have to work deliberately through it to get what you want. So Bud N says, help with setup for 5 to 15 yard short wedges over obstacles, and how much grip pressure and acceleration. So for a short shot like that, there doesn't need to be much grip pressure. The only way I can really describe it is that you want to hold the club with enough pressure so that way you can still hold on to it, but not so much pressure that it's that you don't have any feel, right? So it's just enough pressure so that the way the club doesn't come out of your hands. Essentially, that's what you're looking for there. And then setup for the shot would be just setting up with your feet together. I would use, if you have to hit up over something, you want to use some loft. So something like a 60 degree, 58 degree, 56 degree, even a 54 degree, would work good. Sometimes you may want to open the face depending on how high you need to get it. You may want to do that, or how high lofted a wedge you're using. But I would just open the face a little bit, and then I would just feel like you're using mostly your body, right? So it's not a wristy kind of position. It's more, for that type of shot, it's not a real long shot. So it's going to be more the body going back and through like this. And it doesn't have to be real fast. You're not looking for, a lot of speed through the ball. All you're trying to do is get clean contact and consistent contact. So I would get your feet together and feel like you're using more of your body. There's not a lot of wrist sets. More, you're just trying to turn this club around in a circle and hit the ground as you're coming through. You'll sweep the grass and practice that, and you should get some better results, some nice soft wedges when you're doing that. So Stephen W. says, what is the difference in technique when chipping near the green when the ball is sitting low to the ground in the rough compared to when the ball is propped up on top of the rough? So if the ball is sitting down in the grass, like you don't have access to the back of the ball, then you want to put the ball a little bit further back in the stance, right? Because you want to have as much access, clean access to the ball as you can. So if the lower equator of the ball is just covered up by grass, you don't have clean access, right? So you got to put the ball a little bit further back in your stance. I would use some more loft. So use like a higher lofted wedge, like a 60 degree, 56 degrees, something like that. The reason why you want to use more loft is because if you have more loft, you can swing harder. When you're in some deep, thick rough and you need to get down to the ball, you can't take a swing that's like that. It's just going to get caught up, right? So you use a higher lofted club, and a lot of times you want to open the face so that way you can swing a little bit harder, right? So ball back in the stance a little bit, face open a little bit. And if it's really down in there, I may hinge my wrists a little bit. And again, that's going to help me to get a little bit steeper angle of attack to the ball. And then I would just kind of try to pop it out. So basically it would be a swing that would look kind of like this. And just try to pop it up out of there. So you're trying to hit that back of the ball, trying to drop that club back behind the ball and pop it out. Now, if the ball is sitting up on top of the grass, like it's on a tee, that's how you want to imagine it. Like it's almost like it's sitting up on top of a tee. So in that situation, you wouldn't really have to use a wedge in this situation. You could use, if you have access to the back of the ball, you can use, you just want to use enough loft to get it up on the green and rolling on there. So use something that you're comfortable with to carry it onto the green. But I would just imagine like that ball is sitting up on a tee, and you can play the ball more in the middle of your stance here and just kind of take a stroke back and through like that. And you don't, because the ball is sitting up on a tee, you have access to the back of the ball. You don't have to take like a real aggressive swing. It can be a slower, more controlled kind of swing, really focusing on getting good contact on the back of the ball. But you almost want to hover the club and imagine you're hitting the ball off of a tee when you're doing that. So something you want to go practice for sure to get the hang of it, but that's how you want to work through that. So Alberto A says, is golf swing similar to a baseball swing? Yeah, it's very similar to a baseball swing. The only difference is, or I shouldn't say the only difference is, the main difference between a golf swing and a baseball swing is that with a baseball swing, you don't have to square the face, right? So if I were to just try to hit a ball, I take a baseball grip here. Actually, here's what I'll do. I'll take my golf grip. And if I was trying to hit a baseball, I would come in and I would be like this. So if I take my normal grip, right, square club face, normal grip, and then I take that and then I go like I'm hitting a baseball and I come in, it would be like that. Well, look at the club face. It's wide open, right? So I need to square up that club face. And that comes from turning that handle like that. So I have the hands in front, right? And I'm turning that handle down. The other thing is that in baseball, you're trying to hit it with basically no shaft lean, right? So if I took this and then I went down like that, well, that's way in front of where my contact with the ball is, with a golf ball would be. So hitting a golf ball is almost like hitting a ball to right field, right? For a right-handed golfer, it's almost like I'm here, I have my hands in front, right? I'm contacting the ball. Basically, I want to contact the ball out here, so I'm closing the face like that. So this would be like a baseball swing. That'd be golf. Here's a baseball swing where I'd be trying to hit a home run to center field, right? Here would be where I'm trying to hit a home run to right field, and now I just need to square up that face, and that's coming from my wrist angles, right? Getting those proper wrist angles. So a golf swing is like we're tilted down, we're hitting a ball to right field, and we have to square the face up with the wrists. And I have to hit the ball in a precise place. Whereas in baseball, I have a wide range on that bat where I can hit it, right? I'm also trying to hit a moving target, so it's very different. But other than that, there's a lot of similarities there. All right. So Alberto, a golf swing on a different plane. Yeah, kind of. It's very similar. Yeah. So Shane B says, my low back gives me pain. Things I need to work on: chicken wing, keeping head behind the ball during the downswing, and starting the downswing. Need to be a lot smoother to protect my back. So as far as the back is concerned, unfortunately, I'm not going to be able to help you with that. I talked to a doctor about your back. A chicken wing is usually caused by the arms out racing the body. And that can be caused by not starting the downswing correctly. So you're probably thinking of the backswing and the downswing as two separate events. So backswing and then downswing. But the reality is that we need to be thinking about things that we're doing in the backswing to have a proper downswing. So, and that comes from the pressures in the feet. So at address, we want to be about 50-50. As we get into this area of the backswing, lead arm parallel, we want to be loading up. We want to be loading up right away and peaking out to this position in the backswing. And then we actually want to be recentering as we get up to the top. And that's probably where you're going wrong, is you're not recentering as you go up to the top. So here's a great drill to help you with that. Start out in your normal stance, no golf ball. And I want you to and be nice and balanced in your feet. And then as soon as you start the backswing, I want you to be loading up in your trail foot right away. And I want you to pause right here and have as much pressure as you possibly can in that trail foot without like moving your body, just turning and tilting and pushing into the ground as much as you can. Now from here to the top of the swing, you're actually going to recenter. You're going to move your body forward and put pressure back into your lead foot. So now, as I get back up to the top, now I'm about 50-50, and now I'm going to continue to move pressure to my lead foot as I come all the way through into impact. Do that drill and then do it without the pauses to get the proper feeling of it, and then try it with the golf ball. But the idea, what most likely is happening is that you're probably starting the downswing without getting pressure into that lead foot. So you got to get pressure in the lead foot in the last part of the backswing. Ed D says, thanks to you, I'll check out the V1 tutorial. Couldn't figure it out. LL. No worries. Yeah, check out those tutorials. That should help. Marisa R says, is it wrong to have a weight distribution of 70% on the lead foot before starting the backswing and keeping a higher weight distribution on the lead foot before the downswing? Not necessarily. I mean, you do. But when they measured the tour players, they found that in the backswing or at address, they were about 50-50. They found that it was 55%, 45%, so 55% on the lead foot. The reason for that is that if you have a little bit more pressure on the lead foot, then you have a little bit more pressure to put into the trail foot. And then they loaded up in the backswing and they maxed out the pressure in the trail foot at about halfway or so back in the backswing. And it was about 75-80% pressure. And then as they went up to the top, they recentered. They got about 50-50. Then as they came into impact, they're about 75-80%. And then as they come into the full finish, it was about 85-90% on that lead foot. Now, if you're talking about having pressure on that lead foot and then keeping it there throughout the swing, that's fine to do, but it's just not going to be the most powerful thing. Every powerful athletic movement has a loading up and then a momentum pressure shift, right? Think about a baseball pitcher, right? They're loading up, winding up, and then they have a pressure shift, right? It wouldn't be very powerful if a pitcher kept their pressure on their lead foot and pitched like that. That wouldn't be very powerful. So you can hit good golf shots doing that, but you're going to be losing power most likely if you do that. And in fact, for pitch shots, I don't move my weight around. I keep my feet together so that way there isn't much of a weight shift. And I keep my feet together like this, and I keep my weight forward. So I'm not looking for power on that shot. But if I'm taking a full swing at something, and I want to have my power, so I'm going to do a pressure shift. So we got a couple more here, and then we'll wrap up. So Ed D says, so I played Saturday in the great feel I had with your go-to drill. The shaftling apparently turned into me coming over the top, pull hooked, 10 tee shots. Thoughts on how to adjust if that starts happening. Swinging more to the right just made me hook more. You're just closing the face too much. You're getting the face too close. So it's not that you're coming over the top or swinging to the right. You're just closing the face too much. So you're most likely still flipping, but closing the face, but using the wrist angles to close the face. You're not getting the hands in front. So if you're someone who flips, your wrist angles look like this. Lead wrist cup, trail wrist is flat. If you do the wrist angles and don't get shaft lean, it's like that, right? So the face is just really closed. So that's what most likely what's happening. So if you get the hands in front, now the face is squared up, right? So you're just not getting shaft lean. You're just flipping, and that's what's closing the face. So look at your swing on video, see what's going on, but that's more than likely what's going on. You got to get your hands in front. So last question here is from Yvonne S. Says, would you discuss cocking the wrist at the top of the backswing? Yeah, so when you're going up to the top here, you want to have very little wrist cock initially to get your shoulders really involved. And then as you get into this area, you're going to have a little bit. So I like to see somewhere between 90 degrees and, a little bit more than that. But I don't like to see this. If you're like this, less than 90 degrees, then typically you're going to be cocking the wrist too much and you're going to uncock them very quickly. So you don't want to really fully cock your wrists until later on in the downswing. So if you're someone who's casting the club, I would try to feel like you have almost no wrist cock in the backswing and that you're cocking your wrists in the downswing, right? So really, really wide like that. And then I feel like you have very little in the start of the downswing if you're struggling with casting the club. Now, that doesn't mean that that's what you're going to do. But I tell you, if you feel like you're doing this, right, it's probably going to look more like this, right? Like you're getting that cocking of the wrist as you're coming down. So that's what you want to feel like if that's what's going on. So try to feel like you're more wide in the backswing, and then you're not getting that wrist cock until as late as you can in the downswing. And if you actually overdo it, just ease off of it. So thanks everybody for joining. We'll be back here tomorrow. Not sure if I have any spots available still. If anybody was interested in swing reviews, looks like I still have a few spots available. So if you're interested, click the get a review link and then join my roster there if you want. If not, keep up the hard work, everybody, and I'll talk to you soon.